and welcome to a Light Reading Innovator video series where we're discussing how companies in the global communications industry are changing and what's going to happen next. My name is Phil Harvey. I'm an editor at Light Reading, and today I am joined by Rick Leviano from Microsoft. Rick is the CTO of the worldwide telecommunications industry at Microsoft. Rick, thanks for joining me. Good to see you.
My pleasure. Great to be here, Phil.
And it is good to be talking to you because we want to talk about the cloud today, and of course how telecom network and other network operators are evolving. And I guess a great place to start would be, for those network operators who, I guess I want to say if they're new to the cloud, but maybe no one's new to the cloud, but maybe they haven't fully embraced the cloud. Let's put it that way. What's a good starting point for these companies, and then what motivates companies like this to start moving workloads and applications into the cloud?
Yeah, that's a great question. A good place to start the conversation, Phil. So, I mean, we all know the cloud is really helping telcos become more agile, to become more cost effective, more customer focused. Everybody's trying to do that. Think of, upgrading from your old flip phone to a smartphone, right? Everything just works better, works faster with the cloud. Uh, Telcos were slow to adopt the cloud. I think that's not news to anyone. We know we had some challenges up front, but I can tell you that's no longer the case, right? So the train has left the station, and we also think there are certain capabilities, Phil, like generative AI, which were built for the cloud, right? It's very difficult, for example, to train a large language model using traditional on-prem types of approaches, right? So the cloud has been built for a lot of these new capabilities. And those kinds of things are really accelerating the migration to the cloud. Now, to your question, to your point around where do we start, right? I think everybody started, right? I don't think there's any telcos left that haven't, started that journey in some way, but every telco is different.
Yeah.
Let me give you a few things that we see telcos doing. So, first, assess your current infrastructure, right? Identify which parts can be migrated to the cloud with the least amount of disruption, right? And that usually involves non-critical workloads, things around data backups and things like that. Don't start with network functions, right? That doesn't make any sense. For telcos, that means maybe look at your IT enterprise applications, right? Who is hosting an Exchange server on-prem today? Nobody, right? So look at things like Microsoft 365 for productivity and for collaboration. That's a great way to begin to kind of dip your toe into the cloud. But next up would be your BSS stack, all those apps for customer care, for CRM, even for billing, right? Even billing's now ripe for cloud migration, especially for mobile operators that really have consolidated modern billing platforms deployed. OSS is kind of the next layer up, right? OSS tends to be a little bit more complicated because these are data-heavy apps that tend to be very close to the network. And so there's a little bit more complexity involved there, right? But absolutely also ripe for the cloud. And as I said, network is kind of the most complex thing. It's last. And frankly, network really requires more than just a public cloud. It requires a hybrid type of an architecture. And so it's very different. But anyhow, every cloud journey is different, but it's a good idea to start walking before you can run, right?
Yeah, I'm glad you kind of covered it this way because it does kind of, it takes that familiarity with the cloud, and using it in your day-to-day life, like with office apps and things like that, and email and unified communications. And then all of a sudden you're thinking about, well, hey, we're kind of talking to our customers using very similar tools. Why not take some of our customer care into the cloud? And then why not some of these other functions? So yeah, I think that's a great, don't do it all at once. And like you said, the network stuff is incredibly complex. So that's something that kind of needs its own special attention. I guess, the point of all this though is we're trying to help network operators modernize and monetize their networks. Can you give a couple of examples of how Microsoft has been able to do that?
Yeah, I think so. I think better. Let me just kind of frame that into what's our strategy. We're helping telcos modernize and monetize their network centered around four main pillars. And you might hear bits of this in the conversation, but one is around elevating customer experiences. optimizing your OSS BSS, modernizing your network, and then unlocking new revenue streams. Last one being one of my favorites. And the approach really aims to enhance customer satisfaction through like AI platforms. Again, AI infused platforms, streamlining BSS with automation being absolutely key, upgrading your network infrastructure for better performance, better security, and then creating new revenue opportunities through innovative AI powered solutions. So think like reimagining your voice services is one. And yeah, we have a plethora of different stories, but I want to start with something that's hot off the press. Vodafone just announced that they're rolling out Microsoft 365 Copilot to 68,000 employees to boost their productivity, their innovation, and the quality of their work. And Vodafone, as you know, they've got a really very mature and sophisticated AI strategy already. And so adding Copilot to the mix, and in such a significant deployment, that really demonstrates the value of a turnkey large language model-based assistant, enterprise assistant like Copilot, the value they can have in an organization like a Vodafone. And so some of the areas that they're using it, or some of the value that they're seeing, is around productivity enhancement. So automating tasks like drafting emails or putting together presentations, summarizing meetings. It's a great product for that. Around customer experience, obviously that's another great use. That tends to be like the front door for a lot of generative AI types of applications. But in this case, Copilot can help create more personalized and efficient experiences for the agents that are servicing your customers. Around operational efficiencies, this is a really cool one where Copilot is helping Vodafone's legal and compliance teams to draft and to review contracts much more rapidly, to draft RFPs much more rapidly. And so that really saves significant amount of time. And then lastly, around employee satisfaction. Once you deploy Copilot, you will never be able to undeploy it because your employees are going to love it. So 90% of the users at Vodafone already claim they're benefiting significantly from it. 60% noted improved work quality as well, right? So not only is it improving the work and saving them time, it's actually creating better work. So a lot of great value there. And a slightly different story. Let's go to Asia. PLDT in the Philippines. Great telco out there. They just opted to deploy the Amdocs customer engagement platform, which is a modern AI-enabled customer service platform that's really specifically designed to meet the needs of telcos. And this platform is built on Microsoft Dynamics 365, which is our business applications platform. And so the solution is going to help PLDT deliver seamless and elevated quality of experience to their customers, and really going to help them stand out and differentiate in a very competitive market. And then finally, one just really close to home, everybody's heard AT&T and how they've chosen Azure Nexus as their platform for their 5G network. And it's really a way as to how AT&T can reduce their operating expenses that are associated with managing really complex cloud infrastructure. Again, we mentioned network being the most complex. But instead, it really enables them to concentrate on their core competencies, right? Not the underlying infrastructure itself. So Nexus, if you're not familiar with it, it's really a carrier-grade hybrid platform that enables operators like AT&T to deploy, to manage, operate, monitor, and secure their mission-critical, most sensitive network functions, right? Those network workloads in a unified manner. And so that's probably the greatest story that we have in the Americas.
Yeah, it's interesting on AT&T's network too, is that the cloud exists both in their central offices and also in data centers. It's deployed in both places, and it sort of interacts, all as one. So it's not just this thing that's often some remote thing that the operator loses control of. And it's
Yeah,
I've had a chance to tour their Dallas facility. It's a pretty
yeah.
impressive setup, how they're managing all of that.
Where does the public cloud begin and end, right? The reality is with hybrid, you don't know, right? The cloud will push into on-prem with edge capabilities and vice versa, right? So it's really kind of becoming more as to distributed compute, right? It's not necessarily just everything up in the public cloud.
It's
So
it's great.
hybrid, absolutely key, yeah.
It's great that you brought up these examples because like you were saying earlier, one of the big motivators for going all in the cloud is AI and how AI is going to change, um, you know, not just how
Yeah.
companies manage networks, but how they manage their entire enterprise, like you gave with that Vodafone example. So, so we have that one example. How else are operators going to be using AI in their organizations, and then how might that change, or how might that evolve in the next few months?
Yeah, that's an interesting one. It's such a hot topic, right? Everybody just wants to talk about AI, and operators really are getting pretty clever as to how they're using AI these days, right? I'm always chuckling and amazed that to some crazy new use cases they're coming up with. Um, think about AI to supercharge customer service chatbots, right? Generative AI and voice integration, for example, are two relatively new trends that are reinventing the chatbots, right? The chatbots that deployed 3 years ago, those are all news. They're very much intent-based, rule-based. Eh, they're boring. Now you layer in generative AI capabilities, and you tie them into your IVR, and you're reinventing what these things can do, right? So, for example, let's kill the IVR cascading menus. Who in their right mind wants to dial up an IVR, listen to 12 options, and then press three to select? It's nonsense, right?
Yeah.
Natural language is certainly the way that you're going to interact through these things, and using your voice makes a lot of sense. So you've invested in creating a chatbot capability. You've now layered generative AI. Now expose it to your voice services. Make speech your primary channel for that capability, not just text chatbot. And so that's been a really really, I would say, relatively new enhancement to a lot of these AI capabilities. Another one is around AI to optimize your networks, right? To keep your calls and your internet running smoothly. It's super important for me when I'm trying to win that online game, right? So absolutely critical for AI ops and those types of use cases. Around predictive maintenance, we're seeing a lot of that. That's a biggie, right? Predicting equipment failures, repair them before these things happen. Even being able to do predictions all the way to maybe a set-top box, right? So you get telemetry from CPE hardware, even trying to identify failures there. So a lot of great stuff there. And there's the literal million use cases. I did mention there's probably really in the hundreds of use cases that we're working with telcos on. And the entry point has tended to be customer care, but it's
Mhm.
exploded, Phil. Now every part of the organization is really benefiting from AI.
That's great too, because customer care is one of the areas where telcos and cable operators, even when they're doing well, they don't get enough credit for, what they're
Mhm.
able to address and overcome, before the customer sees it. And so, so these tools will certainly help that out. Another kind of telco centric sort of point of view here is, telcos are all about control, and AI and network automation is all about, relieving them of that control to a degree. So when we have so many parts of the network that are either automated or managed,
Mhm.
um, how much control do network operators, especially your customers, maintain over their networks? And then how do you sort of enable that and allow that to happen?
Yeah, let me frame it slightly different, provide a little bit of context too, right? Because you're right. I mean, but think again that the network, that's the reason they exist,
Mm.
right? And so they're absolutely they need to be very controlling around how that's ultimately managed, right? But they are, I think, diving deep into AI and really other advanced technologies and how they transform their networks, mobile, fixed, or otherwise, right? And I think the future for them really looks very exciting, not only with the rollout of 5G and all these additional technologies they're exploring, but these advancements they're investing in that are ultimately leading towards faster speeds, lower latency, more reliable connections, and the such. Um, but let's think about how are you going to be able to scale that? And certainly AI ops is key to that strategy, right? Being able to, more specifically, have platforms that are designed to drive operators towards autonomous networks. And so we've been working very closely with the team forum on this initiative around autonomous networks. And think about leveraging AI, leveraging machine learning, to automate a lot of these network operations, being able to enable proactive maintenance, enable real-time anomaly detection, optimizing your performance and your routing. All of that, of course, they're doing today, but it's a very manual process, right? How much of that can be automated? How much do you trust the network to actually automate itself, right? But ultimately, you want to reduce downtime. You want to be more operationally efficient, reduce costs, and at the same time, you want to be able to improve customer experience, right? So if you can improve the health of the network, the quality of service, you're going to ensure a more reliable and a seamless service and have a happier customer.
Yeah.
There is one use case that I find very exciting around this, and it's around the network co-pilot concept, right? I think everybody's probably heard of it. We certainly pitched it during last NWC. We've got some customers that are using this, but think of a co-pilot that's now coupled to your AI ops components, right? And it can help network engineers more rapidly analyze and resolve issues. So it's like ChatGPT with access to your network telemetry, with your topology, your inventory, uh, logs, product manuals, prior cases, all of this stuff. And now your network engineer can converse with this copilot to more rapidly resolve an issue. It's really been a game changer and really a strong move towards autonomous networks.
That makes sense, and I like that you're sort of bringing up the how the business processes and the network automation kind of work together, and that helps the the network operator not only adapt to changes in their network, but also serve their customers in a more thorough way. So another topic that kind of touches those same issues is that of network security. So, why is it important for network operators to evolve how they're approaching network security? And what kind of feedback are your customers giving about their current state of network security?
I mean, security is a top priority not only for telcos, but it's a top priority for Microsoft, right? Our Secure Future initiative, we put everything on hold and made security the top priority, job one across every engineering team. But for telcos, as they start transitioning to the public cloud, it becomes even more important, right? And these threads are ever evolving, right? Look at generative AI. We talked about it a few minutes ago, but with Gen AI now becoming prevalent, it's really an increasing threat, and both it's now a new surface area that we need to protect, right, as telcos. But Gen AI tools are now being used in more sophisticated attacks towards the networks, right? So it's a relatively new thing that we have to cover for, and we know that hackers are not going to stand still, right? They don't, and neither should telcos. That we have to remain very vigilant. Now, one concern that telcos have, I mean, many other industries have it. Telcos perhaps have it a bit more because of regulation, is around data privacy and protection. There are very, strict regulations beyond GDPR. They're very telco-specific, regulations. Think of TSA and the NIST directive, ECC in the EU. All these are very specific security regulations that impact telcos more so than other industries, and they require then telcos to ensure the integrity, the availability, confidentiality of their networks and services, what they're providing to their customers. And so to navigate these challenges, telcos have to adopt really a more comprehensive security strategy than many other industries, right? And it's going to be able to assess both global and regional requirements and all this regulation that's, again, very, very strict. From the Microsoft perspective, this is something that comes up, and virtually every strategic conversation we have with telcos, right? Now, we made a huge investment in the area. Of course, we have Azure regions and more than 60 regions across the world, more than 300 data centers. The reason that we have that is there's a bunch of reasons, but clearly we need to have data centers where our customers are, right? And so we're building these things out, very aggressively across the world. It does simplify a lot of the regulatory type of conversations when you have a data center in region. But we've also developed some very unique technologies in the space. So, for example, we have something called the Microsoft Cloud for Sovereignty, which is really a powerful tool that telcos can use to really enhance their security strategy, especially when dealing with the public cloud environments. Think of it like a comprehensive solution that that really ensures compliance to a lot of these regulations that we talked about. And it offers these really robust data protection and privacy controls, that are very advanced, right? Advanced encryption and data residency options, what we call sovereign guardrails, the ability to the telco to really control, how that data and how those workloads are managed in the public cloud. And maybe I'll close on this point. I mentioned hybrid, right? I mentioned Nexus being hybrid. You'll hear us mentioning hybrid a lot. In fact, Microsoft has been mentioning hybrid since the inception of Azure. Even when we first launched Azure, hybrid was always part of the overall architecture, right? We always knew there's going to be something more than the public cloud. And so, hybrid becomes a very important part of, this security and regulatory compliance, right? Because now we have a portfolio of edge appliances that telcos can deploy in their own data centers to ensure that they're meeting security and regulatory or performance types of requirements, right? In fact, hybrid is the preferred approach for some workloads, like network workloads, which is why, for example, Azure Nexus was designed as a hybrid platform from the beginning.
Oh, that's great. That's a great overview of what's going on with security, and now that I think about it, with every single region and country having
Mhm.
differing data rules, differing security rules, and things like that, I think pretty soon we're going to be um, not wondering what we do with AI, but wondering how we live without it, because being able to
Great point.
put up those guardrails and guidance, from place to place, depending on the customer you're dealing with and the service that you're offering. Let's
Mhm.
see. Last question, and this one kind of goes to who Microsoft is as a company. I mean, since I've even, you know, first started using Microsoft products, it's always been clear that Microsoft doesn't do it alone, that it works well with partners. It
Yeah.
brings, these software providers, network operators, and others, to every thing that it does. So let's discuss the partner ecosystem. How are network operators and vendors able to both benefit from the Microsoft partner ecosystem?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, and you're absolutely right. So Microsoft is a partner-centered company, right? So we're a platform company, provide an underlying platform, and we rely on partners to ultimately extend that platform for their own business, right? For their own needs. And so we work very closely with telcos, not only as customers, but as partners, right? So partners in the sense that they're a very important channel for our services. So, for example, telcos do resell Microsoft 365, but we also enjoy co-inventing and co-creating applications with telcos as partners, right? And so, for example, there's a new potential slew of voice AI applications that we can build together and ultimately monetize in a partnership. Um, but we have a broader ecosystem of telco specific partners, right? And so these are essentially, the hundreds of ISVs and GSIs that are building telco specific solutions on the Microsoft cloud. So virtually every major, for example, telco ISV, has a partnership with us and is building applications on our cloud. Now, with regards to benefits, do they have an option? The reality is, Azure is one of the dominant hyperscalers, some of the dominant clouds. We definitely want to ensure that you, as a provider of applications to telcos, have the ability to run your application on one of the largest clouds, and we certainly invest in partners to ensure that that's there. In fact, almost everything is going on the cloud now. When I speak to most telcos now, they have become cloud first, to where if they're deploying a new application, particularly in the greenfield, it's going to likely go into the cloud, right? And so that's pretty important. Many of these partners are also moving towards SaaS models, right? SaaS made a huge inroads in things like productivity, but also in things like CRM. Look at Salesforce, for example. And so many other BSS and even OSS applications are now transitioning towards SaaS, and we're happy to partner with all those suppliers to ensure that they're building those SaaS solutions, on top of the Microsoft Cloud. I mentioned Amdocs CEP, the customer engagement platform, is an example of this, right? They actually build CEP on top of the Dynamics 365 cloud, which again is our business applications cloud. And And maybe I'll close with a couple of things. One is around generative AI. We mentioned the importance of that. Gen AI was just born and baked in the cloud, right? And so, a lot of what you do around Gen AI is going to happen in the cloud. If you're going to take the most benefit from that, you need to be in the cloud as well.
Mhm.
And then lastly is around, how do we provide a roadmap or a blueprint for telcos and telco partners to be successful in leveraging the cloud for telco specific applications. So we've been working with the TM Forum and their open digital architecture since day one. And so that's been a very important, I would say, piece of contributions that we made. We've recently now contributed what we call the TM Forum Open Digital, TM Forum Open APIs that we're leveraging, and how do you interface with those APIs and the ODA on Azure. And so we're contributing essentially a blueprint, documentation, scripts, and so forth for you to be able to deploy your ODA compliant applications onto Azure very efficiently and consistently. And so there's a lot to unpack there, but clearly, partners are very valued in our world.
I think so, and I think you laid it out well, and you've given people a lot of, I think, a lot of reason to follow up with yourself and with Microsoft as they're thinking about their cloud journey and also pondering the possibilities of where AI can, change what they're doing in their network and what they're doing in their business overall. Rick, thanks so much for taking the time and explaining this and giving me a bit of a background on all this. Really appreciate it. And thanks for being part of our Innovator series.
Terrific, Phil. Thanks for having me.